and scale it up just a little bit more. And that's probably going to work okay for what we want. So, and these shears, like I said, they just sit behind the curtains here like that. Just deselect that. Now we're going to be duplicating one of these curtains for the opposite side. Let's just take a quick look at our shear material again. Now, you remember in the original mesh here, if we look at the mesh, I said I've only added polygons to the front of the model. I haven't added any to the back. That's why it disappears when we turn around. There are no polygons here. And I've done that to save on polygon count, because we're only using half the amount of polys if we can only see the front, and I remove them from the back. But if you're creating a piece of fabric and you do want your player maybe to run around it and see the back, that's going to be a problem. What we can do is we can go into our material and we can turn on two-sided. We'll save that material again. This is a similar thing that you have in Max. In Max's material, you can create two-sided materials. Let's open up our model again. And now you see you can actually, if you have a piece of fabric in the middle of the that the player can run around, but you still want to save your polygon counts, make your material two-sided. That way the player will be able to run all the way around the model, so see both sides of the object, but you're still only using half the amount of polygons. So you have the advantage of cutting down your poly use in half, but still allowing the player to see both sides of the model. So we're going to leave it that way for the shear. We're also going to do that for the material we created for this curtain. Now again, if we jump into the curtain, and we just pull back a bit here, I've done the same thing. I've removed the polygons from the background to save on poly count, so it's only using half the amount of polys it normally would. But we have a problem, and if the player goes behind the curtain, they're not going to be able to, they're going to see that the polygons are missing. It's see-through. So we're going to do the same thing for the curtain here and make it two-sided. So just flip that two-sided switch, resave your material. And now if we open up our mesh again, we'll pull back a bit, we have a full curtain. And we need to do that for the curtain material here because it's actually up against a window. So if you're looking outside, and the windows are actually going to be glass. So if you're outside of the building looking in, you're going to see the back of the shear, and you're also going to see the back of the curtain. So it's important that we do make those two double-sided. Okay, now I'm actually going to export one of these curtains flipped from Max into Unreal. And the reason I'm going to be doing that as opposed to taking this curtain, duplicating it and rotating it 180 degrees. You could do that, but I actually want to bring in a separate curtain for the right and left hand side as opposed to duplicating one for both. It's going to be easier for me to create a blueprint that way, I think. Yeah. And to make sure the curtain looks consistent, if I do a rotation on this to the opposite side, if I duplicate it, rotate it 180 degrees, the folds are not going to be matching, and I want my folds on the curtain to match. They're going to be inverted on the rotated piece. So instead of doing it that way, I'm actually going to duplicate it in Max and re-import the other side. So I'm holding down the Shift key to create a copy. I'm going to go into my mirror tool and mirroring it. Now being able to mirror it will keep my folds consistent, but have it facing in the opposite direction. So I won't have my folds inverted, which I would get if I did a rotation in Unreal on my curtain, but I get a mirror copy. We're going to call this one grey curtain R for right. And again, we still have the polys deleted from the background, so we're still only using half the amount of polys we normally would anyway. I'm just going to export that piece in our curtain, grey curtain fabric folder, if I can find it. Where did I put it? Feeling like, oh, here we go, curtain grey. I got it the wrong way around. And we're going to call this one a curtain grey R for right. And I'm doing this because I want to create a blueprint of my curtains all made up so it's easy for me to place in Unreal. So I'm going to jump back into Unreal and import that new curtain. Clentrix asking, why do I use multiple different 3D software? I don't. Unreal is a game engine for making games, or ArchViz walkthroughs and that type of thing. 3D Studio Max is 3D program. Now, so you can't create 3D models in Unreal. You have to use a third-party 3D program to make your model outside of Unreal, outside of the game engine. So you make your models in a 3D program like 3D Studio Max or Blender, which is a free 3D program you can download from the internet. So you use your 3D program to make your model, and then you use the Unreal program here to make a game with your model. So they're two different types of programs. You can't actually really make these sort of 3D models in this program, in Unreal. You need to use another 3D program to make your model. So that's the reason I'm jumping back between Max and Unreal. I use Max to make the model. I use Unreal to import the model and make my level, my game, whatever I'm doing. Like I said, you don't have to pay to buy a 3D program because Blender, B-L-E-N-D-E-R, is a completely free 3D program you can download from the internet to make your models. And Unreal, this program I'm using here, is made by Epic Games, and it's completely free to download and use as well. So again, I don't know if you're not familiar, guys, anyone watching, if you go to Google, again, it's just for the benefit of people that may be a bit confused, like Clentric is asking why I'm using two 3D programs. You can download Blender, B-L-E-N-D-E-R, which is not what I'm using. I'm using 3D Studio Max, but all 3D programs are the same pretty much now. If you go to Blender, you can download their 3D software for free. You'll have most of what I do in Max in Blender. Max is just more for an ArchViz, used a lot more in ArchViz, and it's used in film and games as well. And I've been using 3D Studio Max for more than 10 years. That's why I use Max as my program. But you can download Blender here for free. It's a 3D program and it's very good. A lot of the guys that watch my channel here use Blender. So you download the installer for Blender and install that 3D software, and you can play around with it. And the games engine is from Epic Games. You know, the people that made Unreal Tournament and all that type of thing. And you can actually download the Unreal Engine for free from Epic Games. So if you want to make a game with Epic's Unreal Engine, which is an excellent engine, wonderful tools for artists and used by a lot of different game studios for their games. It's a AAA games program. You can download the Unreal Engine for free from Epic Games here and install it on your machine. Now, if you want to make a game that you sell online, like on Steam, you've got to pay a 5% commission to Epic on all your sales after $3,000, I think it is. But if you're not planning on selling anything online, then it's always going to be completely free to use. And anyone that wants to know who I am and what I'm all about, you can go to my website, which is phildoes3d.com, and you can read up about me here on my website. Look at some of my work and all that type of thing, because I sell my models that I make on the creative market and on Cornucopia 3D. So if you want to know about me and what I do and what my work is, you can check out my website, phildoes3d.com. Or you can look at some of the models I have for sale on places like the Creative Market and Cornucopia 3D. Okay. So yeah, do guys feel free to pop into chat, and if you're not sure about anything, ask me in chat. I'm quite happy to help if I can. I'm just looking at this curtain we've just imported. Why is it imported the same one again? Let's jump back into Max quickly and have a look at this. Let's do a reset on the X form. And re-export that one more time. Curtain grey alpha right. Yes, we want to overwrite. We'll jump back into Unreal and re-import that model one more time. Okay, now this is a problem we're having with our texture being inside out. And that's a problem I think that I haven't done a flip properly here in Max, so I'm just going to flip it in the Y direction as well. And we're going to export it for the third time. Third time's a charm. Grey curtain right. So yeah, like I said, I work in ArchViz now, architectural visualization. I've worked for game studios in the past, and I've worked in cinema and film. So if there's a question you have about anything, guys, please feel free to pop into chat and ask me. Why are you doing that? I'm going to export it again. Third time was not a charm. For some reason it's coming in backwards. Now it could be a problem with Max's mirror tool. I have run into that issue in Max before. The mirror tool in Max can be temperamental. Sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't. And it doesn't want to here. Now, by all means, we can fix this by assigning that new material we created, the two-sided material. But I don't want that. I want to work out why it's not coming in correctly. I'm going to drop this into the level and have a look at what's going on. Alright. We're going to jump back into Max again, back into our mirror tool. I'm mirroring it in the Y. No clone. Okay. You see that we see both sides in Max because the material is a double-sided material in Max. But I have to work out why Max is, when I'm doing the import, it's not importing correctly. Edit poly. You can see in Max we only have polys on one side because it's shaded darker red on the back where there are no polygons. Lighter red on the front where there are. So we did a reset on our X-form. Let's just make sure our pivot is correct. Do one more reset again. And let's try exporting it again. Okay, let's jump back into Unreal. Let's re-import this model again. It's still doing something quite strange though. That is weird. I'm not sure what's going on there. Again, it could be a problem with Max's mirror tool. Yeah, that's odd. I've run into problems with Max's mirror tool before. When it does a mirror, it's not doing it correctly. I can't really, off the top of my head, think of a way to fix this. If Max is not mirroring properly, then that's going to be a problem that I can't fix. Alright. Let's see if we can do it in Unreal. We are going to have this problem though where our folds are going to be inverted. It may still be okay though, we'll see. We can do that simply by right clicking, going into edit, and we'll duplicate the original curtain. Did they add mirroring in Unreal? Been a little while since I've used Unreal. They may have added mirroring. I may have to look that up. There may be a mirror tool in Unreal now. I have a feeling that they were talking about doing a mirror. Oh, here we go. Although it's looking a little strange. Let's undo that. And let's do a mirror in the Y. Okay, we should be able to mirror it in the Y. Now, that saved me having to muck around with Max's mirror tool, which is obviously a little bit faulty or temperamental. I thought they may have included mirroring. When I last worked with the Unreal Engine back in version 4.0 or 1, 4.0 I think it was, now they're up to 4.15. There was no mirror tool, but it looks like they've added it now, which is wonderful. It means I don't have to muck around with Max. Now, the reason this is great is because, again, the computer is only, the program is only reading that one curtain into memory and just instancing it here. So we're saving a lot on polygons and on texture count just by using the duplicate and mirror within the engine. So I'm just going to move these curtains into place. I'm going to pull one forward in front of the other one because that's how a curtain would normally sit, or pull one back actually, would normally sit in real life. We're going to pull our shear back a bit as well. Okay. Now, I'm also going to take one of the frames we have here, which are the ones that sit above the curtain, this one here. Again, I'm just going to duplicate this. Now I'm doing it here in the level. I'm going to be deleting all of these objects when we start rebuilding the level. I'm just getting you used to the idea of duplicating your geometry to save on your poly counts. But we will be deleting all of these when I start to actually build the actual building again. But I want to pull this up because this will give me an idea of how wide I need to make my curtains. So this piece goes right up to the very top of the curtain, up against the, so sitting inside of here will be the window, and that goes virtually up to the top of the ceiling. So I'm just going to position it about the middle, make sure it's pulled forward to cover over the curtain. We may pull it down a little bit as well. It needs to come forward even more. There we go. And now I know how far in I need to take these curtains to make them fit within my window. So this one has to come in a little, actually out a little. And this one has to go out a little. Now my shear, I want 2 shears back here. I could stretch this one to make it fit the entire window, but I think it would look more interesting because generally with a shear you're going to have one on either side so that you can open it up to look out the window. We're going to scale it just in one direction here, so I'm going to scale it in, pull it over. Again, I'm going to right click, edit and duplicate. Where are we? I want to get you into the habit of doing this, doing the duplicate, so that you can save on poly counts. I'm just going to have them overlap just a little. Just going to pull one back a little bit as well. Well, actually pull one forward a little bit. No, back a little bit. There we go. We're going to pull you back a little bit. All right. I'm going to take the that cover down a little as well. So now we've created our curtain section for part of one curtain section for the windows. Remember in Max we have 2 different curtains. This one though I want to change the texture on, so I'll do that when I choose what texture I actually want to use because I hate that texture. But what we can do here now is let's create a blueprint. So we've already created one blueprint, which is one curtain with one of these ties here attached. We can create as many blueprints as we want though. So let's create a blueprint of this by going up into our blueprints and convert selected components to blueprint. Again, we're going to place it in our blueprints folder we created. And we're going to call this one grey curtain complete underscore prefab, because it's a prefab. Just give the editor a minute. Now again, see, so that's created a blueprint of that curtain for us that we can easily now place in our level over our windows. We don't have to muck around inside of the building in confined space to get everything lined up correctly because it's already created for us here in a blueprint. And as you'll see here, and I'll, where are we? If I go into my blueprints, this is our completed blueprint here. If I just drag that into the level now we have our completed curtain section we can easily place over our windows without mucking about positioning things in a confined space in, say, a hallway or something. So that's the one of the great advantages of using a blueprint like that. You can create a model made of multi-parts that you've duplicated to reduce your polygon count. You can make all that into one object that's then really easy to move around in your level. All right, let's just move this to the background here, I think. Again, though, it looks to me like, oh no, it may be okay. I was going to say it looks a bit big, but I think it may be okay. We can scale all these just like we would a normal asset, even though it's a blueprint. But I'm just going to take a quick break for a couple of minutes, guys. I want to grab a fresh cup of coffee. I will be back in just a few minutes. I'll leave you with my be right back screen. So yeah, I'll be back in a couple of minutes, guys, while I grab a fresh cup of coffee, and we'll continue on with bringing our assets over to create our Art Deco building in Unreal. Okay, so looking at the model here, you can see that the material on the second curtain looks a bit weird, and that's because we haven't swapped it out for the proper material yet. It's just using a default material, the default material. So let's jump into that mesh. Actually, no, it should be using the right one. I think it's actually an artifact of the lighting here in Unreal, because it has like a HDR effect on. The higher up you go, the lighter it gets. We'll look at that when we actually place it in the level to make sure the lighting is correct. But we're not using this grey curtain, so I'm going to delete it. That's the one we duplicated in Max that wasn't duplicating correctly. We don't need this texture because we already have it in the level. It was brought in automatically. And we don't need that material either. I'm just cleaning up my materials here, my objects, to make everything nice and organized. Again, I'm just going to jump back into my materials, look at the material we're using for the actual curtain. Alright, we should be good. Let's jump back into Max. I'm going to delete that copy we made so that we don't get confused thinking we did import a mirrored object when we didn't. Alright, so we have our shear in. Let's move that to the background so we know that we've finished working on it. I'm not going to work on that curtain yet because I haven't chosen the texture I want to replace that with yet. Now this curtain, if I was just changing the texture, I could use that mesh, but this one actually, it does have a tassel on it, so I want to import this as a separate object. We still have our main stairwell here we have to work on. I don't think I want to do that today. Let's have a quick look through the rest of the assets we still have to import. I don't like this little blue rug. I want to change the texture on that completely. And I haven't chosen the texture I want for it yet, so the floor pieces I want to do as one object. I know that there are 2 more rugs we have to import, but that aren't in my list that I forgot to add. I have to find those before we can work on them. Now, we have this other paneling section, which is plaster paneling for inside the building, that I do want to retexture. I don't mind the texture here in the middle, but I don't like the texture on the outside. We could work on that. The flag I'll work on, not today, but at another date. We actually want to make that animated like we see in the original fly-through. Let me get up to the bit where it's actually in the building. In the entry here and in the exit of the building, there are these flags that are on the wall that are flowing in the wind. If you look up here, you see them moving in the wind. I actually want to bring those in. We'll do that, not today though. They've actually got to be animated, so it's not actually animation. We'll use cloth physics in Unreal to do that, to get them to move. So what do we have here? What can we work on? You'll see that the texture is different as well. I want to use this new texture for the flag. It's just a little bit more interesting, a bit more detailed. We're not going to work on the floor sections. I don't want to work on this main lamp just yet. Everything else we've done in the background, so Let's get all of these stair sections done, I think. Let's start with this one. This is a main stairwell of the building. So, I'm going to move these urns to the background because we've already done those. So we'll just pop them back there. The columns on the end here, we've already created a prefab for those here in Unreal. So we don't have to work on those. So I can begin by, I'm going to select the stairwell and go into isolation mode in max. And I'm going to remove these columns because we don't need them. From the top and the bottom. And we don't need them because I've already made them. So we can just delete those. Now this carpet that runs up the stair, I wanted to actually change that as well. I'm trying to remember if that's actually part of the original texture, part of the model here, or whether that's another object I've placed on top. I think it's actually in the text, maybe not. Let's see. It's actually another model that's sitting on top to make the carpet, so that's good. We'll work on that, but not just at the moment. So I'm going to detach that. Not as a clone, I'm just going to detach it. I'm going to call it stair carpet. Okay, and then we have our stairs themselves. Alright, so let's look at this model and work out what the best way to bring this into a game engine would be. Now we have railings on either side. Again, we don't necessarily need to add both rails because both railing sections are identical. So we can export one railing section and mirror it in Unreal after duplicating it so that we're only using the memory from one for the other side. So that'll save us polys, all these polygons here on this side we don't need. We're only going to be using the ones from this side and duplicating it over. So we only have to worry about the rail on one section here. Let's start there. So let's go into, again, sub-object mode. I'm going to select the railing and the runner. And I'm going to detach them. Main stair rail. That will do. Now we have this side section here. Go into sub-object again. We never see this side of the step over here because that butts right up against a wall. I do want to keep the railing section like this. Normally when a stair runs up against a wall, you wouldn't have this. You just have the actual rail for people to put their hand on as they walk up. But because this is the main stairwell in this building, so it's the first thing you see when you actually enter the building. Just here. You see the stairs actually butted right up against the wall. Normally you wouldn't have a railing section like that, you just have the rail. But as this is the main stairwell, it looks much more grand to actually have the rail on the opposite side. And so that's what we're going to do here. But we can do that through duplicating this rail and mirroring it in the Unreal Engine. So let's just continue on here. I want to select the actual steps as well. And I'm going to detach them. Do I need to detach them? So they should be one object. No, we'll do an attach on those as well. I'm going to call it main steps, I think. Alright. So we've detached the rails from this side of the railing section. We want to detach this part of the rail from this part because we're not going to be using this part. So again, I'm going to go into sub-object mode and select all my rails on this side. And we'll detach them. We're going to call it rails unused. Alright. So we have our steps, we have our rails, and then we have our railing sections here. Again, I'm going to be removing the wrought iron though because I'm using the one we've already made in Unreal to save on poly count. And we also have our carpeting here for the stairs. Let's start with the rails. I want to retexture these because again, I made this texture back in 2011 and it's not terrible. I want to give it a bit more detail. And I want to do that in Substance Painter. But before we can do that, we have to UV map it. So let's do that. I'm going to go into sub-object mode, select just the top railing to begin with, throw down an unwrap UVW. I'm going to open my UVW editor here. We'll go into polygon mode and I'm going to do a mapping. Let's see if a box mapping will work for this. I'm just going to be selecting them here so I can see them in my viewport. Make sure to turn full object mode off here. Otherwise, if that is ticked, when I select one, it's going to select all of them. So I'm also going to turn off my map seams, which are these green lines. They get in the way. And that's just here in max. So I'm going to turn off full object mode so I can select just parts of my object. It's hard to see here because we're in sub-object mode to begin with. That's why the entire mesh is still highlighted. But I can see here with my outline what I'm selecting. So I know that that's the top section because of that yellowy green outline. And that's the bottom, that's the inside, and that's the outside. And we can probably use box mapping here, I think. So what we want to do though is we want to move all of our UVs outside of the 0 to 1 UV space, just temporarily. Now we can collapse our stack. I'm going to go back into sub-object mode, select the bottom runner, do the same thing. I'm going to put an unwrap UVW down. Open the editor. I'm going to turn off map seams. And we're going to do a box mapping. We're going to move them off to the top outside of the 0 to 1 space here. 0 to 1, 0 to 1. You must always make sure your UVs are within that space, but we're going to fix that right now. So we're just going to do another collapse. We're going to throw one more unwrap UVW down on the entire object. Open up our editor again. Again, we're going to turn off map seams so I can see what's going on. And now we can move our UVs into our 0 to 1 space. Now we want to try and get have the UVs take up as much space as we can without them going out of the 0 to 1. So they have to stay within that box. They can't be sticking out like that. But we want to take up as much room as we possibly can within that box. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to move them in one by one. There aren't many of them, so it's not too much of a problem to do it.